What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video, and we'll get straight to the point here. I want to talk to you about being overwhelmed by your painting reference, and I hear this from many people. They look at the view, especially if it's outside, it's plain air. There are so many details, and the question is, how do you deal with that? How do you even start to edit the scene or simplify it or realize what you want to focus on? So I'll attempt to answer some of these questions in this video. I'm going to give you 3 tips, or rather 3 stages to go through and figure out what it is about the scene you want to show, you want to convey, and how to edit it out and simplify it. So let's start with the why, or what you want to show. That's the first thing you want to look at, and that is the focal point. I have a note here. Focal point is number 1. Look at your scene, reference, photo, whatever it is, and ask yourself, what's the main thing here that I want to show, that if I drop everything else, that's the thing I would paint. So, and I'm going to actually show you an example here. This is a scene we're going to paint in the next video, but what you see here is the art fair scene where I sell my paintings, and you'll see how the people here are kind of in the center, and they have a lot of interesting shapes to them, a lot of interesting contrasts. So in this example, the people are going to be my focal point. Great. Now we know what the interest, where the interest will come from. People are great because they tell a story, the way they're dressed, you can tell if they're on vacation or if they're working or doing something. So that's a really good focal point to choose. Now, if you look at them up close, there are a lot of different contrasts and shapes around the clothing items. On the head, there's a lot of highlights. So that's a really interesting thing to take into consideration. Now, why is this good as a first step, the focal point? Because if you notice, the more impressionistic and abstract you go, the fewer details you're gonna see. But the focal point still stays important. So you may see a painting of just people and everything else behind them is a blur. That may be one way of attacking your reference photo. So if you chose the people as the focal point, that's going to be it. If you chose a building as a focal point or a parasol as a focal point, then that becomes the main important thing, and all the rest is a backdrop to that. So it's just an idea of thinking about editing and dropping details and developing a scene. So first you want to think about a focal point. What's the main thing that's interesting in this scene? It could be a dog even, it could be a sign, it could be whatever, it could be a car. Many times for me it's cars or maybe boats. Just find that one thing and figure that out. That's the first thing. Now the second step I wrote down is large shapes of value. And that is how you figure out the general composition. Because what you'll notice, and if you look at this scene once again, you'll see strong diagonal shapes of the shadows. You'll see strong areas of dark value with the tree, or the parasols are large, relatively large areas with light value. This will help you to build a composition around your focal point. In this case, it's the figures. So I'm going to place the horizon line, and then the figures are going to interact with that. They're going to cut the horizon line, okay? And then they're going to interact with the diagonal shadow coming through with the composition, with the perspective into closer to us. So you see how these support each other? Now, if you're looking at your reference and you can't find large areas of value, you may want to change the reference photo, because what happens is you do need some large shapes to support a composition. If you have just a lot of bits and pieces of small details, you either have to unify them, and that connects to what I just said earlier, a person, and then all the rest is a blurred backdrop, so we connected everything else around that focal point. Or you have to change your reference, because it's very hard, especially in the beginning, to paint based on something that's just full of small details. You may want to climb that mountain, you may want to try it out, go for it if you do, but just saying clear, large shapes of value are a major thing to help you build a composition like you see here in this reference. Okay, so that's the second part. Now the third part is depth and detail. Depth is the thing that most people lack in their paintings. Even if there's a gimmicky kind of approach to it and they get to draw and paint the people right, or the focal point right, lack of depth is what kills most paintings for me. And again, this is a stylistic choice. If you want to have a naive painting or to be more abstract, you can put more or less emphasis on depth. But if you do strive to have some kind of a realistic feeling of depth and three-dimensionality, then you want to follow these guidelines. So what you want to figure out is, from the focal point and the composition created, what's at the foreground, what's in the middle ground, what's in the background, and make a separation between all of them. So if something is in the background, you want to go a little more muted, a little more gray, a little more blue, a little more loose edges, blended edges, but the closer we get to us, usually it will tend to be more focused, more sharp contrasts, more small details, larger. So these are the things you want to pay attention to, and you have to figure out. Sometimes I'll just not paint a scene if I feel like there isn't a strong element of middle ground, background, and foreground, middle ground, and background. Because what happens is you look at a street from the side and it's flat. You just see the street and the cars. There isn't a lot of interest in it. But if I can figure out a composition with a person in the front, then some cars in the background, then a backdrop of buildings, that's perfect. Okay, so that's what you want to try and figure out. Do I have a clear foreground, middle ground, background? So let's go over them real fast. First thing is focal point or points. Okay, there may be a few. Figure out what's the main one thing that if you have to drop everything else, you can paint only that. Second is the large shapes of value that will help you figure out the composition. And the third is depth and detail, where you put the sense of depth and how many details you put in the foreground, middle ground, background. Okay, figure out these three things. Always have them in mind, especially when you look at a photo and you're like, so many details, I don't know what to do. Those are the three kind of loose steps you want to go through. Okay, so I really hope you found this helpful. Let me know in a comment down below if that speaks to the need of, trying to figure out a scene, or if that helps you feel less overwhelmed. And if you have any follow-up questions, I'll love to know that, because that's going to be the topic for the next video. So definitely let me know. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. That really helps me with promoting the channel. I will see you again in another one real soon.